Yes, sir, we are live.
Hello, good evening from India, and good morning and good afternoon in various parts of the world. Thank you for logging in. My name is Rajendra Shende. Uh, I'm a product of IIT Bombay, having worked in India's private sector as well as United Nations for nearly 2 decades. Presently, I'm a chairman of Pair Policy Center. I must apologize that my video camera has suddenly decided not to cooperate. So that's why you are hearing my voice only. And somebody told me that when I'm not visible on a video and only audio is on, in fact, my performance improves. So let me believe in that and go ahead in welcoming today's speakers for an excellent debate topic that we have. And both the speakers are going to be very, very interesting, and those who deeply dive into the subject, anything to do with the United Nations Security Council, and United Nations General Assembly. Probably I don't have that much experience of United Nations General Assembly and Security Council, but I know the United Nations system exceedingly well, having got into very close contact with those who matter, those who give the funding, those who implement, those who succeed, and those who fail. So, our first speaker is Ambassador Manjeev Singh Puri. He was a former Indian ambassador to European Union, Belgium, Luxembourg, Nepal, and he has served in Indian missions abroad in Germany, Cape Town, that is South Africa, Muscat, Thailand, and Venezuela. He also served, which is more important for today's event, as an ambassador and deputy permanent representative of India to the United Nations for 3 years. And that 3 years, 2009 to 2012, was a period during which India was on a Security Council as a non-permanent member. As you know, Security Council has 15 members, 5 permanent. Then the 5 are elected by General Assembly, and remaining are all representing their regions in a very equitable fashion. He held the vice presidency of UN General Assembly when he was in New York. His major areas of experience have the roots in his strong belief in multilateralism. And he was very close to the debate of UN reforms. His professional focus has been on issues relating to the environment as well, like climate change and sustainable development, and has taken part in climate negotiations. Ambassador Puri has a master's degree in management, and he is a graduate of St. Stephen's College, Delhi. He is presently a distinguished fellow at the Energy and Resource Institute, TERI, T-E-R-I. Welcome, Ambassador. And our second speaker, am I audible, Atharva?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks. Our second speaker is Professor Joe Thomas. Professor Joe Thomas has worked in a senior management and in the leadership positions with a number of international organizations in Australia, South Africa, Nepal, Hong Kong, East Timor, Bangladesh, Switzerland, and USA, and of course in India. He was a technical advisor to World Health Organization, WHO, and Asia's regional advisor for the leading child health-centered charities. He has been part of the initiative focusing on advice to the ministers, diplomats, and senior officials. Having conducted research in ICMR, Indian Council of Medical Research, universities in Hong Kong, he has authored 4 books and more than 50 peer-reviewed articles. He was also executive director of 26-member intergovernmental organization, and he was associated as a academics par excellence, as a pro vice chancellor, dean, etc., and as well as more important researcher in areas of sustainability, global health, diplomacy, and policy dialogue. Presently, he is a professor of public health at Institute of Health Management in Victoria and Australia. So here we start. I'm not certain whether anyone in the audience would need any introduction to the United Nations and probably the system it employs to maintain peace and security in the world, which is its prime function as per United Nations Charter, which was formulated between 1942 and 45. Many consider that the United Nations, though peace and security is on the top of the agenda, it has become an institution of power politics. I'm using slightly moderated terms to say that, because probably the things are more intense as far as the power politics concerned in the United Nations. But for today's debate, I think that what is coming out in the context and in the backdrop is India has become a non-permanent member of United Nations Security Council for the 8th time in January 2021. And India will remain so for 2 years till the end of 2022, which is going to be a very challenging time from all the spheres that we are witnessing today, that is COVID-19, climate change, and never-ending conflicts between the countries and within the countries. And I'm not going to dwell upon those in detail because that will come up in the debate itself. The question is, India has a great standing in international platform, mainly because of our leadership. I'm not talking about only International Day for Yoga, but very recent act of India, which talked about or which was demonstrated by giving COVID vaccine produced in India to nearly 90 countries at the cost of even its own society. And that became a big debate within India. But there was no doubt that internationally it was acclaimed action. Even the most powerful country and prominent member of United Nations, USA, has been repeatedly saying that India was really friend of the world, because friend in need is a friend indeed. Having got that kind of an image, are we going to make any change, any difference by being a president of the United Nations Security Council? And my proposition to the 2 public speakers are that we don't see any move to be out of box, to be someone who is going to make a difference. Because even our Minister of External Affairs has said that though it is a singular honor for India to be the president of the Security Council, in the same month when we are celebrating our 75th Independence Day, we will be a country which will believe in moderation, peace, and dialogue. That is hardly any new proposition. So my first question to both the speakers, starting with ambassador and then going to the professor, is India determined to make any change as a president of Security Council, or it is going to be a routine affair, even if India has a chance to do something? Ambassador, floor is yours. You have to unmute yourself and then start speaking.
Thank you very much. Dr. Shende, thank you very much for this invitation, and thank you to your policy center too. If you don't mind, I want to say a big thank you to Professor Joe Thomas, because it was he who introduced me to you. And I want to thank him because only the other day he chaired so very well a policy dialogue that we had on roughly the same subject. Now, you know, I am a practitioner. And I like Professor Joe Thomas because he's a dreamer. You know, frankly, we must dream. It's only when you dream that you work towards something. Practitioners, by definition, you know, tend to look at nitty-gritties, get into the act, and of course, deliver. But there have to be visions. Now, let me say a few things for your viewers so that matters are a little clear and a little better understood, even as we dream. In my understanding, India is a country with a manifest destiny insofar as its place on the global high table is concerned. And this, let me tell you, has nothing to do with X leadership or Y leadership. It is the nature of the construct. Usually, we used to say that we are the second largest country in the world, the largest democracy. But you know, in 5 years' time, we'll be the largest country in the world. And I hope you understand that even the symbolism of that becomes radically different from being the second largest country in the world. And think about it, the way the world works. We will also be among the 3 largest economies in the world, although I believe still for a very long time a developing country, nowhere near the per capita incomes that good developed countries in the world have. Having said this, let me make another 1 or 2 points quite clear for your viewership. The United Nations is not international government. I know, Mr. Shende, you worked in the Montreal Protocol. I'm not sure if this is the place where I can highlight how it came about and what happened. You said you know the system very well. I'm sure you know it. And therefore, you started by saying you know the donors. Very important. You said you also know who are the people who get things done. That, sir, is what is called global governance. Vastly different from global government, so it has nothing to do with global government. And the United Nations is intrinsically and essentially a power play game. I don't think we should have any doubts on this. It is a continuum of the Westphalian theories, which came about for more than 100 years. Indeed, multilateralism as we know it today is marking 100 years this year with the birth of the League of Nations. There were some intrinsic flaws in it. Things didn't go right. We had the United Nations. Remember, there's been no Third World War since the United Nations came about. So in a sense, it has fulfilled its principal role. No matter what we are saying that, you know, it's not delivering, not doing anything. Let me say another thing to you. While it was initially set up, or let me say the fundamental idea was international governance and basically keeping a lid on various things, but doing a kind of balance between the 2 real powers which emerged after the World War II, Russia and the Soviet Union and the United States, Britain on the other side. Something very interesting happened. Even in those days, the issue of human good got added on. So if you remember, while the WHO goes back a long time and so does ILO, the FAO got founded. We also had the World Bank, IMF, which were, of course, initially set up to ensure reconstruction of Europe. The World Bank used to be called the International Bank of Reconstruction and Development. But again, as a result of good work done by people from India, more than any other country in the world, we brought in the dimension of development. And so the United Nations system, and I include in this the World Bank, the IMF, the WTO, and all other such bodies, including your Montreal Protocol, etc. It has also become a tool for doing something for human good. There are a lot of things. CGIAR system has been the greatest help to us in the green revolution. We are now struggling, if I may agree with what is going on, with surpluses from a ship to mouth existence. Let us also understand polio eradication. Let us understand so many different areas where things have happened. I know the WHO is going through a bit of a bad phase, being called all kinds of names. But it has been the organization which has seen to it that polio is virtually eradicated in the world. It's been the place where so many standards, etc., have got developed, and so on and so forth. Let's look at climate change. If we are look, and I know that today COVID is the big, huge thing in bold letters. But at the end of the day, it hopefully will get controlled in the next year or two once we do some better vaccination. We all perhaps were not up to the mark. The developed countries more than the developing countries. Easier to heap the blame on WHO. But the ones who run the WHO, in terms of your own definitions, who run the thing, really didn't pony up and didn't do a great job. So, when we look at the greatest challenge in the world, climate change, if there is going to be a way forward other than technological advancement and completely new discoveries, getting rid of carbon, it is going to come through the via media of the United Nations because it lends a certain legitimacy. People buy onto it. And even when they sometimes disagree, they say, we've taken the agreement, we need to honor it. Now, coming to the Security Council. So this is the 8th time India is serving on the Security Council. Remember, we were a charter member. We were also a founding member of the League of Nations, incidentally, even though we were a dependency at that time, a colonial country. Even in 1945, we were a colony. So in 70 years, we've served 8 times on the Security Council. Great. The presidency comes by rotation. We've got our task. It happens coincidentally to be in August, a year in which we are celebrating beginning of 75 years of our independence. Let me tell you, the last time we served on the Security Council, which was exactly 10 years back, and I was part of the Indian team there. In August, we then also had the presidency. Now, whether it's a coincidence or not, at that time, the Arab Spring had just got unfolded. Did anybody think that there would be a thing like the Arab Spring? Even at the end of 2010, the answer is absolutely no. And yet in January 2011, we were only grappling with Arab Spring. And in August, the first time the Security Council adopted a presidential statement on Syria. Let me tell you, till then, they couldn't get anything through. It was the Indian president. This time, there's been something on Afghanistan. I don't know. These are torturous and difficult processes. Countries play games. Various things happen on this. You asked me one question about reform. Sir, I am a firm and convinced believer that India, as I said once earlier, has a manifest destiny. It will happen. In 1 month's time, no, sir. I think we should be crystal clear, and I don't think anyone is talking about it. But we have to remain at it. Remember, we are the demand doers. And how does change come about? It comes about when the demand doers keep asking, but the others who are the recipient sides of it, they realize that bringing the demand doers in is better for them than leaving them out. And I'll just give you one example and then stop here. In 2008, the G20, which used to be a meeting of finance ministers dealing with IMF and started off at the time of the ASEAN crisis, why did they suddenly enlarge it to heads of state and government? A simple answer was a straightforward one. China is too big not to shoulder global responsibility. But they also took in India, they took in Brazil, they took in Nigeria, and so on. Of course, one of the reasons was let's have more to share the burden. But on the other hand, they recognize these are players who can share the burden, which means that on the power game, there is a recognition that you are, if not arrived, you are an arriving nation. And hence, I believe we must, I will use this term again, we should always, in articulations, diplomatically, etc., state our frustration that things are not going forward, but never get frustrated. Remain at it. You were not grandfathered. It will take a long time before you, as you push the cart, and I have no idea how the road will unfold, but remain at it. The destiny is yours.
Thank you. Atharva, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Ambassador. I think the key message is it's not a momentary attempts to catch the situation, but keep on working on it in a manner that will make a difference. That's the point you made it. Professor, I just want to recall a question which I'm asking, that knowing the international standing of India, and you know some of the examples which have been thrown by ambassador as well as by me, shouldn't we have some kind of an adventurous agenda? Of course, you can't have an isolated agenda, and I'm sure India must be consulting other countries also to decide the agenda as a president of Security Council for 1 month, and probably it is going to remain a non-permanent member for 2 years now. So it's not just a question of 1 month. Shouldn't India try some of the out-of-box smart and UN appropriate adventures to make the difference?
Thank you, Dr. Rajendra Shinde, Terre Policy Center, and also Ambassador Puri. In fact, I enjoyed much of my discussion with Ambassador Puri as well as with Dr. Rajendra Shinde, the behind-the-scene discussion about hosting this debate. And also today is August 14th, the eve of the Independence Day. Maybe let me take the privilege of greeting an advanced Independence Day. And it's the 75th year we are beginning, so it is very significant. So, and this is very appropriate time to discuss about India's role in the international relationship. Dr. Shinde rightly suggested that we should look at certain out-of-the-box thinking at the UN Security Council, not only at the UN Security Council, India's international relationship or India's diplomacy. I carefully reviewed the program of action presented by our Honorable Ambassador at the Security Council as our program of action for the month of August. And they talked about the traditional issues, the Middle East crisis, Afghanistan, Israel and Palestinian conflict, and all the issues they talked about it. But amplifying what Dr. Shinde said, probably this is an opportunity for us to think outside the box. And I would say that one of the great opportunity for India to think outside the box is looking at the health. And increasingly, health is becoming an important element in the global relationship. And it's a right time, it's an opportunity for reflection in the context of the role of India at the UN Security Council chairmanship, and also the continuing membership of the UN Security Council. And also we know that Indian security and the idea of Indian foreign policy, Indian diplomacy is based on the concept of the development partnership. And quite often we present our diplomatic efforts in the framework of as a development partnership. We are not much on progressing on or pushing on the idea of security from the context of militarization. India never went for a military aggression in the real sense to other countries. So that way we have certain traditional ethos values we cherish at the international relationship. Interestingly, we created a portfolio of extensive portfolio of international action in the area of global health. And it is, if you look at carefully, try to unpack it, it's very fascinating. And I would say that this is an opportunity to build upon what happened in the area of global health, how India acted decisively on various aspects of it. And I'll just go through some of the India's global effort in looking at health-related issues and India's effort to address some of the global health issues. And to begin with, UN Security Council Resolution 2565 of 2021, on February 26th, Security Council resolution came that clearly mentioned the need for a global response to the COVID pandemic under the UN leadership. And probably this gives an opportunity to India to look at take stock of what happened, how the UN response to the Security Council resolution is taking place. And we know that we're talking about almost 4 million people dying, and almost 400 million people are infected or affected by COVID pandemic. So this is a significant issue. It is touching the core of global peace, global security, and human security and health security. So, and definitely this is a reason, and there is an opportunity, there is all the legitimate reason why India should take up the role of global health in the context of Security Council leadership. And also when we look at the other effort India is doing in the area of global health, India contributed towards the UNDP, UN Development Fund, and it was basically for the small country and also small developing countries and islands nation program support fund. But increasingly that fund is used for the vaccine equity. And India supplied vaccine to all the peacekeeping mission. And also Indian military hospital to peacekeeping mission is substantially contributed towards the health and well-being of the peacekeeping mission. And India supplied vaccine to 95 countries. And India has got memorandum of understanding with more than 80 countries to looking at specifically on issues of health. And those who are familiar with the medicines, global trade on medicines, vaccines, India is known as the pharmacy of the world. India supports majority of the generic medicine to the world, particularly the developing countries and also the African continent. And also we know that India is the largest producer of the vaccine in the world, not only we are talking about almost 20 vaccines, including the various other non-communicable disease vaccination. And India created a SARS-CoV emergency fund, just to give another example about India's global contribution. And India is playing an active role in the global TB prevention program and prevention of maternal and child health deaths. And PMNCH program, India is actively played the role. India chaired the global movement for the global partnership for the maternal and child health issues. And also India looked at the impact of trade, global trade on health. And India requested the World Trade Organization to look at the issue of intellectual property rights, how it can be removed in the context of COVID-related vaccines and diagnostic facilities. So, and also we're talking about the post-SDG role in the health. Probably we have to start thinking about how health is playing to play an active role in the 2030 global agenda. And again, health is an important aspect of global disaster response. Again, India played significant role in various other countries. And again, when we look at carefully the emerging health impact of global environmental crisis, we know that there is a need for a global leadership and a global action. There are many globalized responses coming up, and probably this is also an opportunity and a responsibility for India to take leadership. And again, we mentioned about India's growing aspiration to become a member of the UN Security Council membership. And probably this is a time to demonstrate a UN Security Council member-like behavior, taking global leadership on critical issues and emerging issues. And there's no doubt that COVID pandemic brought home the urgency to address health security. And global health today is the global peace. To ensure the strategic advantage, it is time for a policy framework on health diplomacy. And probably the best opportunity to present this health diplomacy framework and to operationalize it is at the UN Security Council, and particularly in the context of India's chairmanship. And at least they can flag India's readiness to take the global public health leadership in various aspects of them, particularly in developing countries, and also building upon what we have done. In a nutshell, what I want to say is that India's leadership at the UN Security Council is largely symbolic, but that symbolism gives us an opportunity to set certain agenda, on the table. And that agenda is definitely we look at peace. But we have certain opportunities that are coming up. For example, it's almost as an academician, as a practitioner, I have the freedom to say that probably we look east, when we look at Afghanistan, the situation is very critical, and probably there is there's a possibility of the elected government may be replaced by a non-elected regime. Maybe this is an opportunity to think about a global peacekeeping mission to send to Afghanistan, and India could play a very active role in. And that may be one of the critical role to play in ensuring that people's aspirations are ensured, women and children's rights are protected, And also, an elected government will not be overtaken by a regime which is almost designated as a terrorist organization. So this is a critical. And also, I would say that India got a very friendly relationship with the Myanmar. The military transition, the military leadership in Myanmar is a critical issue for Southeast Asia. India could have played a very active role in taking the issue or initiating a dialogue between the democratic process in Myanmar. So that
right, Joe. I think we'll come to this Myanmar and Afghanistan issue in a moment. Okay, but you made a solid point about the health diplomacy. And indeed, the world is trapped in an unprecedented situation due to COVID pandemic. And we do not have an integrated, collective, and comprehensive strategy to fight that enemy. So you are insisting on a peacekeeping thing is okay, but we need to go beyond that to understand what it takes to make a peace. So my question to the ambassador, who has seen the many UN forums, and as you say that it's a powerful game. It is the only game in the world which is very distinct, but it's a pretty powerful game. Why Security Council or even a General Assembly not able to take any decision related to how to fight in a very aggressive way of this virus? And because this virus is upsetting not only the economic front, but is upsetting our belief in the United Nations, that is that system or is that organization really make us comfortable due to some of the other methods that they use in order to do a collective research, equitable distribution of vaccine, and getting into the channel for helping the poorest or the weaker section or vulnerable section of the society. And if it is so, why Indian agenda, which was explained on 1st or I think 3rd of August by our ambassador Tirumurthy, he said that there are 3 items: maritime security, counter-terrorism, and peacekeeping. And peacekeeping is always there on our agenda of United Nations anytime. So that remains only 2, that counter-terrorism and maritime. But he didn't talk about health at all. And don't you think that the great opportunity is lost, Ambassador?
You're muted, Ambassador. Please unmute yourself.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
Apologies. Dr. Shende, I must say no, and he was absolutely right, the permanent representative. Dr. Shende, I think we all need to understand institutions and what institutions are about. And I said this earlier to Dr. Thomas, we mustn't conflate organizations. The UN Security Council is not like a governing body of the UN. It is a body very specifically designed to look at guns, weapons, violence, and that to a traditional type. And there is a very good reason why that is the case, because there are 5 countries which have overriding voting abilities there, which can stop anything from happening and which can even demand such kinds of resolutions which make it binding on you to act on them, whether you like it or not, like sanctions. Therefore, please let us not conflate the United Nations with the UN Security Council. The ideas of Professor Thomas are excellent ideas, and they must be part of the UN Assembly. At the UN proper, they are part of the General Assembly, and otherwise the World Health Assembly, which is almost the same thing as the UN General Assembly, is the same countries which are taking part in it. And I am very strongly of the view that the pandemic has given us an opportunity to work hard, to be able to press a global health agenda and to use it as an opportunity to put our own positions, our own ideas forward. I completely agree with you there, but not in the Security Council. Let's leave the thing aside. It's in, how do I tell you? In normal times, I mean, in most countries, let's say India, the police is very powerful. Would you like to ask them to take care of ICU running and hospitalization, etc.? No, under no circumstances. They don't know how to do it, and they can enforce things which are not correct. I'm sorry to have used an expression for an institution which is a good institution otherwise, but for the job that it's supposed to do. So let's be very clear on that. Now, India is serving as the chairman of the executive board of the WHO. I'm not in government. I am a private citizen. I, for one, firmly believe in what you said, that this was an opportunity, and this continues to be an opportunity for us to press for several areas of reform in the global health infrastructure, including collaborative research, including vaccinations being more easily available, and finally in things such as looking at aspects that, can you really do something which harms human well-being? I don't want to refer to bioterrorism, etc., but let's refer to all of those kind of things. All of them form squarely under the domain of the World Health Organization. I don't see us very active there. I don't have the answers to that. That has nothing to do with the presidency of the UN Security Council. By the way, on the Security Council, let us remember, we did introduce a subject which has not been traditionally there, but which is very much part of the mandate, which is maritime security. And the Honorable Prime Minister himself led that debate. The first time a Prime Minister from India has addressed the Security Council. So we do things, but you must remember the boundaries. And the reason why you must remember the boundaries is you'd like to be around the table, sir. You don't want to be on the table. Remember these particular words. You want to be rule makers, not rule takers. And at that place, at the moment, the things are a little different. So it's something that needs to be quite clearly understood and internalized. And then what we want the UN, the multilateral system to do, absolutely, we're with you. I mean, anybody would be with you. And I do think these are opportunities. It continues to be an opportunity for India. We believe we are a force for good, and we act as a force for good. And I think people like both you, Dr. Shende, and Professor Thomas, are some of India's great contributions for these forces for good. And I'm leaving peacekeeping out. That's a different kind of force for good also. But if we stick to this particular thing, I think there are lots of opportunities, and I think this opportunity will continue. We need to do something. At the WTO, we are working with South Africa for a IPR patents waiver. Looks difficult. Why do you think it looks difficult? I mean, do you think Mr. Biden minces his words in terms of his sympathy for the world on COVID? Does anybody in the world, the Europeans, the British, does anybody say, we don't want to help the world? They all say we want to help the world, but they won't agree on the IPR. Why? I say, do you know the kind of money that their big drug companies have made? We need to reach that point. I don't have the answers to that. You all are experts and technical experts, but we really need to reach to be in that game. Yes, we are one of the 5 which have produced a vaccine, but its quantities, etc. I'm not talking about SII, which is a subcontractor, but if I really look at the vaccine which India has produced, I mean, its abilities are not that many. It will grow. I'm so happy that we've done it, but we must keep plugging at it becoming our time. I have no doubt in my mind it shall be our time, perhaps sooner rather than later.
Thank you. I think the takeaway from your this second response in the debate is that whatever the priority have been set by India as a president of Security Council for 1 month, I think they were right. I totally agree with you. They are right. What we are trying to do is, knowing that we are surrounded by this unique issue of pandemic, what kind of rules we set? Because I know that you made a very important comment that rule making is different than implementing the rule or taking the rules to the society and make it happen. Yes, That is the issue. But the person like me now, I'm leaving my United Nations experience slightly behind to say that aren't we in a situation where whatever is going on for last 70, 75 years need to be relooked at in order to move ahead. And that opportunity has come due to the COVID-19. So I'm coming back to the professor. I'm coming back to the professor by saying that the way the power politics is being played in a Security Council or even in General Assembly, and I will give you some quick example before I invite Joe to do that, answer that. See, the Security Council has only one resolution since the pandemic has started, and that is a resolution number 2532, which talks about the equity and making sure that we need to have a global ceasefire, and it is nowadays called as a vaccine ceasefire, in the countries where the battles are going on. And we know the examples, is Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, etc., etc. So United Nations Secretary General said, ceasefire till the pandemic is over. And probably take a chance that let it not come again, those conflicts, for doing it. Now, when that kind of a resolution came, there was an intervention by the Security Council members in a very funny way. They started talking and linking that to some of the instances earlier. And I'm not a great fan of USA's representatives or their stand in United Nations Security Council. But, you know, as a citizen of India, I felt that her intervention on this particular resolution, which took more than 3 months to get passed, by that time, I don't know how many millions of people lost their life or became invalid. But she said, you know, shame on each of us Security Council members, that I'm astonished that when we are talking about COVID pandemic, we are bringing in the border politics, conflict politics. It's a shameful. And I think most of the citizens in the world might have liked that comment. So my question to Joe now is, one resolution in Security Council on COVID-19 and 2 resolutions in General Assembly. And that also is the global solidarity to fight COVID-19, international cooperation to ensure that, and probably the weak efforts by WHO to make sure that people act collectively. I mean, I'm not really criticizing the whole thing, but I'm saying that what common citizen must be thinking about this world governance. Professor Joe.
Sorry. And thank you, Dr. Shinde. And let me acknowledge the position taken by Ambassador Puri. We know we have to play the boundaries of the diplomacy. And India played if you look at that point of view, it's perfectly fit into our traditional understanding about what UN Security Council can do. And we could even say that the Maritime Security Initiative was a brilliant stroke. Within the given limitation, we pushed one agenda forward, which has got a very immediate relevance for the India's financial and economic and security consideration, and absolutely no doubt at all. But my argument is that there are certain international opportunities are coming up which we should grab it. And in the diplomacy, we know that whenever there's an opportunity to expand, push our boundaries and take one step further, we grab it. And you know it very well. We don't let it go, any opportunity to expand our position, our understanding about the global situation, and also to make our presence felt about the issues. And this is also in the 2 contexts, I would say that the global response towards COVID pandemic is not an isolated concern. It's a global concern. So we have an opportunity. We are at the cusp of a leadership. And we could have grabbed it, we can put it in the agenda. That's the one possibility. Second possibility, we are an aspiring member for a permanent seat at the Security Council, maybe we should act and behave like a Security Council member by giving direction, giving our aspiration goals, and also consolidating the global response towards COVID pandemic, because it's a very legitimate leadership opportunity. And the third, I would say that probably COVID pandemic is a critique of our understanding about security. COVID pandemic is nothing more other than human security or the health security. The military industry and we have our very sophisticated surveillance mechanism, very sophisticated intelligence mechanism. None contributed towards preventing, forecasting, and doing something about preventing such a huge human security, health security consideration. So this is a time to look at our understanding about what is security. And I would recast our security consideration from border security emphasized to human security consideration. I'm just presenting some of the ideas. I know that these are not in the traditional understanding about security, but we have to look at a new way of looking at diplomacy. And in many countries, particularly developing countries, health is an integral part of their foreign relationship. Health-related products, health-related trade, how the health implication of the trade agreement, this all very carefully calibrated and monitored by many developing countries. And also to say, many of the developing countries, they have their own health ambassadors. US got a health ambassador, Japan got a health ambassador, UK, Australia, they have designated ambassadors, roving ambassadors looking at the issue of health. So global health diplomacy is a legitimate expansion of our foreign policy practice. So from that context, India is at the cusp of taking up the leadership. This is my core argument. And probably Security Council leadership would have an opportunity. There are many other opportunities. So I presented my contention is that maybe we could have flagged it saying that we came to a position that, I'm not talking about in isolation. India got 90 MOUs with particularly on vaccine supply. 80 MOUs on a health-related partnership, and we extensively played international global health partnership. So maybe we push our agenda a little further in the global relationship. And this is also slightly away from the traditional game of security, border security, militarization. Because militarization, what was done when we're talking about huge amount of money? We also have to play the global diplomacy game without a huge financial commitment. Human security, when we talk about Security Council membership, that comes with a huge financial responsibility, which we haven't thought about it. Without a huge financial responsibility, financial burden, we could expand our boundaries of our strategic diplomatic initiatives. And health is one of the issues. So my contention is that India should explore, push our agenda in the area of global health. And this gives a legitimate opportunity for leadership role in the area of, and particularly in the developing countries, in African Union, and also build upon what you have done already. So my contention, I summarize my presentation saying that India should utilize all this opportunity to expand our diplomatic exercise by incorporating health-related issues in the global trade and the global relationship. And the opportunity has come to come out with a health diplomacy framework for India's international relationship, India's foreign relationship. Thank you.
Okay, good. I think both you and Professor and Ambassador's approach seems to be very prudent, with full of wisdom, and saying that take your time and not to rush, because we have to project ourselves as a more matured. And probably I was talking it from the point of view of what the most of the people must be thinking about when they read about what is happening in United Nations about such kind of global crisis. Now, I still have two questions. And I think Professor was discussing about what is happening in Myanmar and Afghanistan and all that I will keep as a last issue. But let me first take the issue of what we call as a peace and security in today's world. I think people, even a common man now understands that the peace is not only related to silence the guns, or it is not related to get into somebody else's border and occupy that territory, or find the difference between the religion and keep on fighting. I think they have understood that in some of the environmental and nature-based issues like climate change also disturbs the security. It also is very well connected with the peace. And we have examples of that. We have examples that Arab Spring really started mainly because the inflation in Tunisia. If you see the story, we don't want to go beyond that, but today there are a number of reports are coming up that national security depends on taking action on climate change and not to allow our some of the consequences of climate change become a new normal. We don't want that to happen. So don't you think, apart from COVID-19, I understood that there we have to take a sort of a wise, mature and cautious stand. But on climate change, would you say the same thing? Why India did not flag that may not be the major agenda. I mean, I know maritime security is the major agenda. I agree with you totally. Same thing about counter-terrorism. But my question is to Ambassador is, shouldn't we flag the issue like climate change for making a peace and a security issue? We are not going to solve the problem in 1 month, but at least initiate the process so that it becomes an issue at the Security Council. I know, probably Ambassador, I hope he won't tell me that Security Council is not something to discuss climate change. But it is. But now, see, what I hear many times, Ambassador, is for the last 75 years, the world has gone upside down. It's the governments have changed, businesses have changed, civil society's thinking has changed. Only thing which is not changed is United Nations rules and charter. So I would like to have your view on why climate change should not be the issue of Security Council.
Dr. Shende, the world hasn't changed. The world continues to remain the same power play game, whether it is IPRs for the COVID vaccine, or it is artificial intelligence or anything else. I think we must understand, we are becoming, as media and other things get infiltrated among us, we are buying a narrative of other people. You know what the big game is? We should understand. Earlier, the big game was very simple. China becoming perhaps the #1 country in the world. When 1945 happened, since from 1945 to, let me say, roughly, if I say use COVID as the watershed, at least till 2010 or so, there was one hegemon in the world. If at any point they had some accommodation with the Soviet Union, there was no accommodation on global economy and so on. There was one hegemon. For the first time, there has been a challenge. And this is what is happening. I think this is something we should understand. No one has any problem with global health leadership. We should do it. In fact, I believe that, we have the chairmanship of the Executive Council of the WHO. We should be doing much more there. Leave the Security Council out. The reason is, please understand its rules and regulations are such that you don't bring in subject matters which will bite you. Dr. Shende, you worked in the area of the environment. You want me to tell your viewers how the Montreal Protocol came into being? I'm not sure you would possibly like that. But it came into being, very honestly, only because an American company discovered the antidote. And after that, they were willing to let all kinds of payments happen. That's the nature of the power game. And it works in environment, it works in economics, it works everywhere. And that's something we should be quite clear. India today is on the cusp of becoming a large player in the world. We know we have to shoulder global responsibilities. And Professor Thomas, let me tell you, I'm sure the calculations are made. There will be cost to it. There is no question about it at all. But this is a power game. I am one of the last guys to go about saying, no, goody, goody, and we will get it. No goody, goody gets anything. There's the famous case of Japan. 25 years, the second largest economy in the world. And should I say where the state of place? I'm very honest and straightforward. India's situation is different. Sir, on climate change, I hope you are aware of the real situation in the world. More than 2/3 of the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has been emitted by the developed countries. And yet, And even today, they continue to emit more than 50% of the thing. Yes, there is China, which is also hitting 20-21%. But India is nowhere on the scene. And yet, what is the basic idea in the world in the COP26? It is India should sign up to net zero by 2050. A country which is the only G20 member with a per capita income of less than $2,000. I know all the arguments that you're talking about, but climate change is a global problem. Actions that India should take are not going to be different from the actions the rest of the world should take. We should do decarbonization. We should do the best that we can, ensuring at the same time development and a better life for our people. Global negotiations are about global burden sharing. And in global burden sharing, if you have responsibility, especially those not only accepted morally, but accepted legally in the signing of the UNFCCC, please sign up and do that. You know, twice the United States has backed out. The Kyoto Protocol was signed when there was a Democrat administration. Mr. Al Gore stood at Kyoto and pleaded for it. And yet, when he went back to Washington, didn't let it get ratified by the Senate. Mr. Trump, we blame him for various things because he was blunt and open about it. He withdrew from the Paris Protocol. How do you know what's going to happen now? Even today, their emissions are 16 tons per person, and ours are less than 2. So let's be very clear. Climate change is a very, very serious, perhaps the most serious problem confronting the world. Its legitimate place for tackling it is the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. I don't understand why you are saying it should be discussed in the Security Council. Why not at the Framework Convention? The Framework Convention discusses issues of human security. There are different organizations for different things. Don't just get taken in by a theory which has been propounded by others. I'm sorry to use this expression, but I think that yours is a setup where the voice will be heard among a large number of people who are good, interested, but perhaps need to have a greater reinforcing of an understanding of why things are done. It's very important to understand procedures. It's very important to understand who wields what power and how things are done. These very same answers can certainly be obtained at the UN Convention Framework Convention on Climate Change. What is the problem in doing it? Why? Who are the ones? You mentioned the US permanent representative during the times of the previous administration talking about we should be sad. What has the United States done? It's all very well to make these statements. What have you done in real terms? They said we will support the IPR issue at the WTO. Have they really done it? Not at all. Nobody's even talking about it. And if the United States was so strongly behind the IPR issue, you think the Europeans wouldn't have buckled by now? Let us understand the reality. India is a country which is a force for good, but let us also remember we are a country which is in a position to shoulder global responsibilities, but at the same time, we must be endowed with global responsibility. We were not grandfathered in 1945 like our Chinese friends were. Bad luck. I don't have the answers to that. We weren't. The reasons for that are also known. We now have to work in a long, drawn, calibrated manner, but we mustn't lose sight of it. And we certainly shouldn't get detracted to a situation where things that we unleash turn around and come to us. That is something you should be particularly careful, because remember, you are on your way to becoming the third largest economy in the world and the largest country in the world. Therefore, the desire to make you shoulder more responsibility without having any of the global power play is something which we should clearly understood is something which is the way human relations work, the way international governance works.
Okay,
I want to thank you very much, Dr. Shende.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, I think we have to understand our responsibility because we are going to become a world leader. I already thought that we are the world leader. So I think we need to have some kind of an strategy to see that. I mean, we are the world leader in spiritualism. In yoga, International Day of Yoga was agreed within few days. And I think that kind of a spirit has to now continue. That is what my suggestion was in order to get your response. Because the others emitted more and we emitted less. And hence the others should take responsibility more is a justice-wise correct. But we are dying. There are landslides coming. So how long we will keep on making that argument? And why UNFCCC cannot do it? Because they have not done it up till now. We are on a third or fourth decade of UNFCCC who has not done anything, and those discussions do not matter at all. That's why it has to go on an upper level. That is the idea of what common people who understand climate change must be thinking about. But
I must interrupt you. I must interrupt you. I fail to understand how you can use the word at a higher level. Please don't say this. I expect somebody like you who would have worked in that system to know that that's not it. These are just different organizations.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Sorry to interrupt. Because,
no problem.
Because I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why I'm interrupting you. Dr. Shende, it is particularly important that those who know reflect the reality of the situation. There is enough happening in the world to try and make people understand things which are different. But please, and we count on somebody like you with your background, with your understanding. And
don't make it personal. I'm
not making it personal.
I'm trying to get the best out of the debate.
Yes, and I am also trying to say exactly that.
I'm saying that
matter.
Reality is,
Dr. Shende,
reality is we are dying.
Reality. So are people in California.
Yeah, correct. So whole world is dying.
This. No, let me make this point to you again very strongly. You matter. You matter. What you say matters. That is why it is important. And if you say the right things,
we'll slightly take the debate away from this point and get Professor into the debate to see whether climate change is the issue which needs the action at higher level than just UNFCCC. That's the point.
As an academician, I would have delighted to see that the UN Security Council, when the list of the wish list is prepared, at least they would have flagged it, or rather acknowledging the crisis of environmental. I mean, it's no more environmental changes. We are almost started calling it and referring it as environmental crisis, and its crisis is real. And there are various references and various responses are coming up. But from an activist, from an academician, from a policy influencer point of view, we have to utilize all the platforms to flag it, remind everybody, constantly remind about the urgency of the climatic crisis. And I looked at the climatic crisis from a health point of view. The health implication of the environmental change is phenomenal. It is much more serious and much more impactful than what we're talking about that we experience in today in the context of the COVID pandemic. And it's a combination of epidemic, combination of environmental crisis, and also we don't have the technological solution. We may not have a vaccine to deal with the temperature, the temperature increasing to 1.5 degree. So we cannot have a private air conditioner. I don't know, technologically, we may be able to come back, cities being air conditioned. So even we don't have a technological solution for the environmental crisis, that is not even in the immediate pipeline. So if you look at comparing with a public health crisis with an environmental crisis, both together is going to converge and create a phenomenal humanitarian crisis. And that's in the pipeline. Absolutely no doubt that when you look at the data, evidence, an emerging crisis, emerging urgency, it gives a very clear indication that, that the next global crisis is how to deal with the impact of environmental transition. I wish Security Council would have acknowledged that position. I know that Security Council may not be able to take up everything, but I saw the list of their priority list, and at least they could have flagged it. And also, this is a 2-year agenda. But at the same time, I mean, there are a few issues which has to be addressed by everybody. Whenever there is an opportunity, whenever there's a platform, we should make sure that, as part of our leadership responsibility, we should flag it and try to get new perspective, new insight, and also new way of thinking. Because these are two things I looked at: global health as a crisis, as a humanitarian crisis. The human capacity, the technical capacity to deal with this, even that itself is not evolving. WHO is doing something, and WTO is doing something, and other specialized agencies are doing something. At the same time, we have a decisive, precise, a global action to deal with the global crisis, a public health crisis, which is phenomenally, it moved into a humanitarian crisis. From that, if you look at that prism, the similar crisis is going to evolve out of the environmental crisis. And I just leave it that way. Why it's not happening? These are the, I mean, as Ambassador Puri mentioned, that these are the very complex international phenomena. But the complexity should not take our energy, our attention, our capacity to dream about the possibility of a different life. And so as an academician, as a person who worked in this sector, I think my message to even my students, I say that you have a responsibility to think differently and hope for the better. That's our responsibility. When you look around, and there are very limited and bright spots you can see. Take the case of COVID, take the case of environmental crisis, and objective analysis giving a very gloomy future. But we have, as a human being, we have a responsibility to look at positively towards the future. As a teacher, academician, this is what you have to do with students. Look at positively, look at answers, look at technological solution, look at idea solution, look at thinking solution. So from that point of view, I look at Security Council as a major influencer factor. Just to set the agenda, these are our agenda, these are our concerns. We may not be able to act on it. So my submission is that UN Security Council has a major institutional framework to set our agenda, to flag our wish list, or put it as a wish list. I would say that we could expand the possibility, because the traditional way of doing business with the UN has to change. I'll just conclude my statement saying that when you talk about UN reform, I would even say that the time to reform the veto the power system. And why? What is the basis, ethical, moral, principle, moral basis for 5 countries holding the veto power? Probably it's like any other, the democratically elected process should select the governing body of 15 members. So UN Security Council, UN reform agenda could have been put into India. Is very conspicuously silent on the UN reform. UN reform should begin with UN Security Council reform. The veto power mechanism, that's extremely undemocratic, unprincipled, unethical. It has to go. Maybe India should have requested, we are not just asking for a position at the Security Council as it is now. We are asking for a democratically elected Security Council. Thank you. I know it's an extremely a wishful thinking, but I dare to put it across. Thank you.
There are definitely 2 issues which we have not yet touched upon. And I think both were hinted by a professor earlier. One was the conflicts around us, which are going on irrespective of the climate change or COVID-19. They have not changed. And the typical example is Taliban. Another example is Myanmar. And I think, to be fair with the Indian representative, he did say that apart from these 3 priorities of counterterrorism, then you have maritime security and the peacekeeping, there are other sub-issues on which India would push. And those are conflicts in Syria, Somalia, Yemen. They also talked about some resolutions to be made about Lebanon and Mali and Sudan and that kind of thing. So let's come to that point, which I think with great enthusiasm, Professor was mentioning during his first intervention. And I heard one statement from you, Professor, that India is close to the military junta in Myanmar. Now, if you start pushing the issues like that of Myanmar, and Afghanistan issue is probably more serious for India, sensitive, because it is so close and it has a history of it and that kind of thing. Don't you think pushing such agenda would look like self-serving president of Security Council? Is there any such kind of a thing? I think I should first give the chance to Ambassador and then probably a Professor. Ambassador.
Dr. Shende, thank you very much for this. Look, the subject of Afghanistan, as you know, has come up in the Security Council on the request of Afghanistan. And I am personally very strongly convinced that this is an area in which, frankly speaking, we don't have many tools, but Afghanistan is of critical interest to us for our peace and tranquility. And so we have a vested interest that Afghanistan remains peaceful and tranquil. Not many tools. The UN is possibly a tool. If anybody had a magic wand, somebody would have waved it. But given the state of play, it should be done. It has always been on the agenda. Incidentally, I'm not sure if you are aware, but there is an old thing called the Taliban Sanctions Committee of the Security Council, which was actually formed even before 9/11. This deals with people who are people and entities belonging to the Taliban under whom there are sanctions. And presently, India is the chair of that committee. So, we have a locus also and so on and so forth. And I completely agree that this matter needs to be looked at. And I personally, look, I'm not familiar with current pulls and pressures that the government is facing. And we all know the arguments of the United States wanting to leave, their domestic constituency having run out with the ideas, become fatigued. They need Pakistan to be able to get things done. All those arguments are known. But from our perspective, reaching out to the Taliban or doing things, that's one thing. But among some of the few options that you have available, because this is a critical, absolutely critical thing for you, given your experiences, the UN is one of them. Peacekeeping or somehow or the other, keeping peace and tranquility there is an absolutely necessary element. Now, I'm not touching upon Myanmar. I take it that you'll ask that separately. Is that right, Dr. Shende? Or you want me to touch upon Myanmar also?
I'll leave it to you.
Okay, sir. I mean, I don't know.
You have more wisdom kind of.
Let me mention about Myanmar. Look, we are a neighboring country for Myanmar. And you know that there have been a number of sets of issues over a long period of time. Setting in Delhi or in Bombay and Pune, etc., we perhaps are not that familiar with the kind of nexus of both terrorism, narcotics, etc., which flows on that border, and things have really been problematic. So dealing with the government of Myanmar is something of which we have no choice in the matter. Every country would like to have a government in another country of its choice, its best friends, etc. But life is not like that. It doesn't work like that. For India, there is no choice but to work with the governments of Myanmar. That we should also be doing things about democracy in Myanmar, etc. I think I personally would not disagree with that. I'm all for it. But the nature of the game is such that you have to look at, who's pushing what are the other people's agendas. And India's situation with Myanmar cannot be exactly similar, or cannot be even, in a sense, simply taken from the basket of those who are sitting 5,000 miles away. We are a neighboring country. We actually share a land border, and there are a number of issues and problems.
That's true.
Taking all of this into account, I think by and large, the governments have always taken the view that, look, we wish the people of Myanmar, we wish the country of Myanmar all the best. We are a democracy. We stand for democracy. We believe democracies and rights, etc., are very important. But we have to deal with the government of the day, because the government of the day is in control. And this, I'm afraid, is a practical set of realities which look at this particular thing. So I'm afraid that's the way. These have always been the way decisions have been taken. And I think there is very great good sense in terms of the continuity of taking these kind of practical, pragmatic.
Sorry for that. Yeah.
Sorry for pragmatic decisions.
Yeah. Good. Professor, your opportunity on that subject which you started in the beginning. Go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Shinde. And you rightly pointed out that, maybe we discuss some of the critical issues first, then we look at two other issues, which I have some particular view to look at both Afghanistan and Myanmar, and how India should be actively involving it. And we're talking about peace operation. And probably what we should look at Taliban is that the financing mechanisms of the Taliban, and who is supplying the arms and ammunition, and who is benefiting from the arms and ammunition sales. Probably that's what we should expose, the nexus between global trade in arms and ammunition, particularly small arms and ammunition. And there are several UN resolutions which is looking at the issue of financing terrorism and financing the non-state actors, and how to deal with it. Probably this is the one thing we should ask. And as a long, probably we should be start thinking about as a possibility, UN peacekeeping mission at Afghanistan. It may not be away from, too far away from the discussion stage. That's, I'm just flagging the possibility. But Myanmar is slightly different when we're talking about. Myanmar, we have an immediate reason for why we should be concerned. Both, in one point of view, we are receiving refugees from both countries. Afghanistan is a limited number, and also our neighboring country, Bangladesh, is already hosting 1 million Rohingya refugees. And we should not say that that's a Bangladesh problem, not our problem. And Bangladesh problems are largely our problems as well. When you look at the geopolitical point of view, when Bangladesh is flooded with the Myanmar refugees, India has to play a very proactive, critical role. We cannot sit back and say that if the refugees comes to India, we'll kick them out. That may not be the right way, because, and also remember, India is not a party to the Global Refugee Convention. So from that point of view, India is a traditionally refugee accepting country. We have a significant number of Chinese refugees in India. Tibetan refugees, I may call it in a different way. We have Sri Lankan refugees, Afghan refugees, and also we had a huge history of Bangladesh refugees coming here, then rather they're going back after a while. So in the context of refugees, we should keep in mindful about it, both Afghanistan, both Myanmar. But at the same time, the financing mechanism of these two countries and how the regime changes may be propped up by the financing mechanism. We should be very careful about it. We should have an opportunity to look at this. And in the Afghanistan effort, what is seldom discussed about is that the financing mechanism of the Taliban regime, and also how they derive legitimacy from them. I had an opportunity to travel to Afghanistan extensively, all the provinces. We call them as, some of them as warlords, but actually when you look at carefully, they're water lords. They are the custodian of the traditional, the source of water. And then their power came from the custodianship of water. So this is also about, the natural wealth in Afghanistan. So that's one of the controlling mechanisms. So we have to look at Afghanistan from a very immediate, urgent threat for India's interest in the global level, in the trade level, and also we have our the trade route towards Iran. There are various aspects of it. So India has to find a way to engage Taliban, and also the power position changing. We have to find a way to engage, and that in the public space, it is not happening. But definitely there may be the different channels of communication may be taking place. But these two issues, Afghanistan and Myanmar, both are totally different kind of, you cannot even compare. These are the two similar peace issues, need to be addressed, need to be looked at it. And probably if you want to have some success in the UN's, India's position, chairmanship position at the Security Council, maybe initiating a positive dialogue in these two areas. And particularly probably we may be able to come out with some positive response in the area of Myanmar, at least coming out with a roadmap towards normalizing Afghanistan, but mindful about the Chinese interest in Myanmar, and particularly the Rohingya refugees are actually, there are huge mining interests, there are huge petroleum interests, and also gas interests. So these are some of the issues we have to keep in back of our mind. This has got immediate implication on our economic interest as well. So maybe we should play a very separate role in Afghanistan dialogue and Myanmar dialogue. Thank you very much.
Very good. I think very complex, but I think you clarified the issue quite well. I think I remember when Prime Minister Modi for the first time became head of the government, he said that neighbors first. And I think from that angle, it looks to be a correct thing. Though we are not sure whether it's a Security Council issue, and even if you take it in the Security Council, whether it would be termed as what is called as a self-serving interest. But I think we have about 10 minutes left for our maximum 90 minutes, and we are going to stick to it. So I think the very last point, which is going to be interesting, and I'm going to start with our ambassador, who has a hands-on experience on policy making. So apart from what we heard from Tirumurthy who is our permanent representative on United Nations, he talked about first three priorities. Then he said, these are not the only one. There are some other things that they are going to do, that the conflicts in various things like Somalia, Yemen, Syria, etc., and resolutions on Lebanon, Mali, and this. And probably India will succeed in doing that, because obviously India is consulting with other members before putting that agenda to them. So the question is, apart from whatever the India is planning to do as a president, as well as a non-permanent member of the Security Council, do you think something is left out, and what that list could be? At least seeding it, because you can't have a crowded issues and then you don't achieve anything. Is there anything very important left out as per you, which should have been India's priority to take it at the global level? And the same question I will ask to Professor as well, Ambassador. And with that, we will close the issue. We'll close the debate.
Dr. Shende, thank you, and thank you very much for this. You know, I'm here in my completely private capacity. I'm not here explaining what the government is doing or not. I'm reading the same newspapers as you are. It is my look. The Security Council is a routine body also. There are many things which are happening. So many of the things which the permanent representative mentioned, Somalia, Lebanon, this, that, they are coming up in routine. There are peacekeeping missions there. Their reports come up. Resolutions are adopted. So there are incremental movements which keep taking place. And since you are a member of the Security Council, you have to be on board as the president. You chair the sessions. So there's a kind of routinization, which also people need to understand. We took up 3 subject matters as those where we were kindling interest. Peacekeeping, certainly very important for India, counterterrorism, everyone knows it, but maritime security, which has not really been explored at the Security Council, but which is increasingly a major global issue, issues of access, issues of crimes at sea, etc., etc. And of course, India has a vested interest in the matter.
Very true.
But talking about what perhaps should have been done, and it got done one way or the other, and it was mentioned by the permanent representative too, is Afghanistan. I have no doubt in my mind. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind, of course, that Afghanistan is a matter of the Security Council. It's always been there. As I told you, we chair the Taliban Sanctions Committee. Given the nature of what has happened 20 years back and what you might foresee again, peace and tranquility in Afghanistan is a huge, big question mark, along with lots of other dangers of violence of all kinds. And we have been the victims of that. Can we keep things away? Is the UN an answer? Perhaps, because the number of answers that you have are very limited. And so therefore, in my opinion, this is the subject to which we didn't give that kind of, let me say, prioritization, but which got the prioritization. In the end, you are interested in outcomes. I mentioned to you that exactly 10 years back, the first time that Syria, we managed to get a discussion on Syria in the Security Council in the wake of the Arab Spring was in August of this year, and a presidential statement was issued. It's only a beginning. Many things happened, many things that didn't happen well. Right. With Afghanistan, a statement did get issued at the what is called the presidential statement, which means everyone came together. If you can get the global community to kind of agree, and it means in particular the P5 to kind of agree that they also need to have a vested interest in peace and tranquility in Afghanistan, then it will be movements in the direction that hopefully are of interest, concern, and particularly, I would say, good as far as India is concerned. Thank you.
Very good. I think that's the best way to conclude your stand on this. I know it is not a stand of ambassador per se, but it's a stand of what you personally feel based on your experience. Professor.
Thank you, Dr. Shinde. And I again push my envelope of my wishful thinking about what could have been happened at the Security Council. And we know that on 9th August, our Honorable Prime Minister, he chaired the session and virtual meeting on the maritime security. When I looked at the speakers and the co-host of this particular event, I was thinking that maybe Indian diplomats should have looked at the possibility of some of our partners, I mean, the partners I use in the broader sense as the co-speakers or co-facilitators. For example, maybe somebody from the SAR, somebody from BRICS, or maybe the Quad we're talking about, rather than the African Union leadership is more or less, it's reduced into a symbolic leadership. So India's stature could have been increased and improved by inviting another little more senior leadership as a co-speaker with our Prime Minister. And this, I'm just putting it very diplomatic in the framework, without denouncing, without undermining the sovereignty of any nation, any president. But Indian diplomats should have been a little more careful about ensuring improving the status of our Prime Minister by inviting some other our partners. So this is the one thing I see that a lost opportunity. And the second thing I would say that looking at the peace and looking at the Afghanistan, maybe we should emphasize more on the financing aspect of the Taliban regime. We didn't made much effort or noise about the issue of the financing of the Taliban phenomena, and particularly the arms and ammunition supply for Taliban. And what is the source of that? It could have been exposed, and we could have created a debate, genuine debate within the existing framework, financing terrorism in the context of Taliban. And this is, and also the consequence is going to be very severe. Whatever democratic benefits Afghanistan achieved is going to be undermined, particularly girls' education, children's rights, and also girls, women's status in the society. Right. One positive thing I noticed that our Foreign Secretary, our Ambassador Harshvardhan Shringla, he talked about children in the conflict area. And he made a very strong statement about children in armed conflict at the Security Council prior to that. So that I would see it as a positive trend, slightly moving away from the traditional framework of Security Council response. And it was a very decisive, very informed presentation about the role of children, how children are being influenced and involved in the armed conflict in both states sponsored and as well as the non-state actors as well. Sorry about that. So we can see some sporadic, some spark contribution in the area, particularly in the area of the children's role in the conflict and the peacekeeping operation. I would say that that's one of the brilliant effort, but that didn't took its logical expansion. And our Foreign Secretary, he made one statement, and this it's not. I didn't see any follow-up on that. I wish there could have been a further follow-up. Since he made a statement, we could have looked into that. And again, there is a serious dialogue at the issue of Myanmar refugees. I mean, the Rohingya refugees. Whether it's a security issue, and it is a security issue for Bangladesh, definitely. And Bangladesh is a friendly neighbor and friendly partnership. Maybe that could have been a very good gesture to Bangladesh and highlighting our neighbor's problem at the highest body of that. So these are some of my random thoughts about what are the opportunities. It's not necessarily a systematic analysis of what are the opportunities which we missed, but 2-3 things I can see that we could have been a little more proactive. From an outside point of view, I know the nuances and also the very limited human resources by which Indian mission is working in New York, and the actual number of people who could really work behind the scene and create the statement and resolutions. If you compare with some other countries, are very limited manpower we're working on that. With all that consideration, from the framework of a traditional way of how Security Council work, India did reasonably good. But at the same time, from expectation, aspirational point of view, we could have done much better. That some of the issues I put forward. And thank you, Dr. Shinde, for organizing this and asking for me to speak about some of the opportunities for India at the international platform. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. In fact, I should thank you because in one of the discussions, this issue came up. Why not have this? And I think I must thank Ambassador because he made this debate lively. And with your health background and COVID-19, I think we are almost contemporarily involved in it to make sure that we don't go too much back in history and remain in the forefront of the issues like Afghanistan, COVID-19, etc., etc. I think this debate was really good. I wish it is being heard by some of the people from Ministry of External Affairs, or maybe they are listening to it. We don't know, mainly because the ambassador is there, no, not because of me moderating it. But I think a lot of good points came. And I don't know whether the similar debate was there in the past. I mean, we have about 15 days past 1st August when we got the presidency of Security Council. So let's see how it evolves. We will see it. We will also see from Atharva and Durga about how many were listening on Facebook. We'll get that statistic soon. But what I want to highlight is a concluding remark, and it is exactly 2 minutes past 7:30, is that I think our debate was a proactive, no doubt about it. We are not saying, it was not informative per se. It was about strategy and options, as the title said. And I think we did go into that and covered most of the issues there. I also feel that there is something which probably Prime Minister's office forgot. I'm making a very cautious statement here because we are talking about a Prime Minister office. See, normally Prime Minister has this inclusive way of organizing events. He says that if he's giving a speech on 15th August, what are your ideas? Tell me. Then he will say that, okay, my 1 month Man Ki Baat, give me your ideas so I can take it up. I don't think he did that before India became a president of Security Council. Probably it was thought that it is so high an event, only restricted to ambassadors and the experts. So people may not have any ideas about it. But I'm sure the Indian common man, I'm not talking about those who don't read about such things, but many youth today, those who are appearing in a competitive examination or are very good in debates and all those things, they might have had a good idea about it. And probably our ambassador Tirumurthy probably would have benefited from that. I'm not sure whether ambassador agrees with it, but I just want to make that as a last comment before closing and thanking ambassador as well as Professor, you. And probably we can have a second part of it or third part of it when India ceased to be president, and then after 2 years, when India ceased to be non-permanent member. Thank you very much. I'm sorry for not showing my face.
I wish you all the best.
Okay,
Thank
bye.
you, Jyoti. Thank you very, very much.
Bye.
Thank you very much. And as a concluding statement, I would say that in the Indian academic intellectual grouping, there are very limited discussion is taking place about India's role internationally. That way, I congratulate you initiative and taking this issue forward. And I mean, that way, this is a path-breaking initiative. Thank you very much.
Okay, bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you very much. Bye.